The legal world is filled with complicated jargon and confusing mixed messages, but one attorney is here to kick the doors wide open so you can make sense of it all. Welcome to Zanes Law's Personal Injury Legal Tips with your host, Doug Zanes.
This is Doug Zanes. I'm an attorney with a law firm named Zanes Law. Our practice focuses on handling personal injury cases or representing, plaintiffs who have been injured in some sort of accident. I've been practicing law for 17 years. We have offices in Tucson, Arizona, and Phoenix, Arizona. So if anybody's listening to this podcast today and has additional questions that come up that don't get answered or don't get addressed, you can feel free to call me at either one of our Tucson offices or our Phoenix offices. The way to reach us in Tucson is through our phone number, 520-777-7777. In Phoenix, from anywhere in the valley, you can just dial 999-9999. Or you can also Google us at zaneslaw.com to get our contact information. Today I'm talking to Brian Riley, who is actually a second-year law student at I believe it's the Arizona Summit School of Law, which is located in Phoenix, Arizona. Is that right, Brian?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, and so why don't you tell me, you had contacted me and you had questions that you, I guess wanted answered. You're looking for some information about kind of law school and finishing law school and the legal profession. And so, I was happy to talk to you, and that's what this is for. And so we're doing it via Skype since I'm down in Tucson and you're up in Phoenix. But why don't you start? Tell whoever's listening to this a little bit about you, and and we'll just go from there.
All right. Yeah. My name is Brian Riley, and I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. So I know a little bit about Zanes Law, and they've been around for about 10 years or so down there. And now I'm up in Phoenix, and I'm in my second year of law school at Arizona Summit. And by the way, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. As it is, hanging out with all the guys and girls at the law school, we're all talking about the future and things like that. And it's a pretty awesome opportunity to get to be able to talk to somebody who has been able to run a successful law firm for the past over 10 years now. So I guess my first question I have for you is, what inspired you to start Zanes Law, and how did you guys get started?
Well, I can tell you, I passed the bar and got licensed, I think in May of 1997. And I don't know if things are different now. I know when I finished it, in 97, or when I was started to look for a job, what I heard out there was, hey, legal jobs are hard to find. And you hear the same things today. Legal jobs are hard to find. So I think legal jobs have always been hard to find, unfortunately. But so once I got licensed, quite honestly, I wasn't picky about where I worked. I just wanted a job. I wanted to start my career. I was living in Phoenix at the time, and I actually got a job offer for a small firm out in Bullhead City, which is way out on the Colorado River in Arizona. And I took it. I didn't have any interest in living there. I didn't know anybody there, but I needed a job. And I took that job. I worked at that job for a while, and a little down the road, I was able to get a job in Phoenix. And I started working for a personal injury law firm in Phoenix. And the firm I was working with did a lot of marketing. that's where their clients came from. So they didn't just do a case or two or three. I think my second month with them was the busiest month they had had in their young life as a law firm. I think the firm was about 3 years old, and they signed up, or we at that firm signed up 160 or so new clients in the month of July. And as I worked there over the next couple of years, that's when I realized what I wanted to do was represent plaintiffs who have been injured in accidents. And most of what we did was car accident representation of plaintiffs, people who have been hurt. And so that's really where I got tuned into that type of law practice. And I learned how the cases worked, and I learned all about them. So when I started my firm in 2003, that was my goal, was to build a personal injury law practice. It took a number of years to do that. I did lots of other types of, handled lots of other types of cases, as we built the firm. I did a lot of criminal defense work. I spent a lot of time in federal court doing criminal defense work. But the goal was ultimately to build a firm that just represented people who had been injured in accidents. And that's where we are now. We started in 2003. We've existed for about 11 years. We started in Tucson, and I think we're probably, I know we're one of the biggest personal injury firms in Southern Arizona. I think we may be the biggest. Over the last year, we've opened up offices in Phoenix, and we started the process of building a practice in Phoenix as well. We're a family business. My wife, Claudia, has been part of the business and has helped me build the business since we started in 2003. And she really handles the business end of the law firm because she's not an attorney. And so she deals with the banks and she deals with how do you strategically grow a business, and how do you move it in the right direction successfully. And that's always allowed me to focus on the legal end of the practice. It's allowed me to, especially as we're bigger now, it allows me to function as a managing attorney and deal with the attorneys and answer their questions and help give guidance. It gives me the opportunity to focus on clients and their legal cases because I don't have to worry about or certainly spend nearly the amount of time I would on the business end of a law practice if it was just me. And I can tell you, the other part of that is, we all have our skill sets, and my wife's a phenomenal business person, which allows me to really focus on being a good attorney and a good managing attorney. Our daughter, Casey, works in marketing at the firm. So we're a family business, but, now we're approaching 50 employees, and we have 5 offices, and, we represent thousands of people every year.
Yeah, and, that's an incredible story. I mean, especially from, being so young, just over 10 years and able to, 50 people working for a firm, that's just got to be a lot on your plate, but you seem to handle it very well. The biggest thing I got from your answer, just to let you know, and I'm going to probably relay this to some of my colleagues over at Arizona Summit, is pretty much just not to be picky and to get experience where you can, because, as we're in our early careers coming out of law school, we're going to need to learn the ropes and figure out exactly which direction we want to go in. And that actually leads me to my next question, which was, how important is it to evaluate your opportunities as they're presented to you within the job market? I mean, taking a job in Bullhead City like you did, and then coming back to Phoenix, obviously you had a plan in mind, whether it was criminal or personal injury. Would it be better to take a job that you're interested in, or just to get your foot in the door anywhere you can?
I mean, I think you got to get your foot in the door. I mean, you have to get experience somewhere. Mm-hmm. And, again, one of the things I see over and over again with young attorneys is when you look at their resumes and you look at, they have a current job, and you read it to yourself, and it's real clear in about a second that their current job is they opened up their own law firm.
Yeah.
What that says to me is they're a brand new attorney and they couldn't find a job. Anybody can say, I've got my own firm. The problem, even with starting your own firm, I mean, truly doing it right out of school, is the lack of knowledge in any area of practice. You don't know how a criminal case works. You've never tried a case. You don't know how a civil case works. You've never been in a courtroom other than, maybe what you did in law school. And that's not a great place to be when you're representing people who need an attorney, mm-hmm. because you just don't have the knowledge base and the experience. I will generally gravitate towards, when we have applicants, somebody who truly is working for somebody else, because I know they've gained some experience with input from other attorneys as opposed to simply, hey, I set up my own office. So I think the flexibility is very important. And if you have one job offer and it's not your dream job, but it gets you started working within the practice of law and interacting with other attorneys and representing clients in some fashion with some guidance, you need to take it, in my opinion, and you need to start working. And then, and I think this is important, I think young attorneys need to make a commitment to that job, that firm, that government agency, wherever that job is, and at least spend a year and a half or so there. A year and a half, 2 years, and learn. And then if that's not the area of practice that they're really passionate about, you move on. I mean, I can tell you my progression was I worked for I moved from that firm in the Bullhead City, Kingman area to a personal injury firm in Phoenix, and I worked there for a couple years. And I litigated cases But in that realm, litigation was doing arbitrations. It wasn't trying cases. I handled a lot of car accident cases. I handled a lot of slip and fall cases. And now, although that was a personal injury firm, it was interesting because the owners of that firm would take just about anything anybody would pay them to do, even though they were really successful doing personal injury. So I did have the opportunity to represent clients who had DUIs. I did a couple dozen bankruptcy cases. I did some divorces. So I learned a lot about different areas. But when I decided, I was going to start my own firm at some point, and I wanted it to focus on personal injury cases or representing people who had been injured in accidents, I also knew I needed to learn to try a case. So I transitioned from that job to a job at the public defender's office here in Tucson. And I wasn't set on being at a public defender's office, but I knew I would try more cases at either a county attorney's office or a public defender's office than anywhere else within a short period of time. And the first opportunity that came up was at a public defender's office. And keep in mind, I was living in Phoenix at the time, had friends in Phoenix, had a place to live in Phoenix. And instead of saying, I'm going to wait and see if I have an opportunity with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office or with the Maricopa County Public Defender's Office or Legal Defender's Office up here, I took that opportunity and moved. Mm-hmm. As a young attorney, I would have much rather been in Phoenix, but I needed to learn how to try cases to ultimately do what I wanted to do. That was an opportunity I knew existed. It existed now. And so I took it and I moved to Tucson. I had that job for a couple of years, and then I transitioned out and started my own firm. So I was flexible, and I had a plan, and I knew my direction, or I figured it out as I was going, and I moved in that direction, and I didn't hang myself up, by being set and thinking, hey, look, I've got to be in Phoenix, or I can only do this job, or I've got to be at this type of firm. Because I think in today's job market, if that's your perspective, you will never get a job.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, and kind of brings up some other questions for me. Like, right now I'm in law school, and they have a lot of really great externship opportunities at the courthouses right downtown. And trying to find a job and doing as many externships as I can sounds like a great idea, especially because I can count it for school credit. Getting involved with criminal cases and civil cases down at the courthouse probably sounds like the best thing for me to do right now if I can in school.
Well, and I think they're great. I mean, I think it gives you opportunity those things create opportunities to network, mm-hmm. to meet other people, to meet other attorneys who can then maybe, help you as you're working towards the end of law school and, you're passing the bar and you're getting licensed, can maybe help you find a job, So the more people the more connections you have, the better. Times have changed. When I was in law school in the, from 93 to, 96, I know a lot of the kids I went to law school with, their goal was to be at the very top of the class and get a summer job working for a big firm. And those jobs paid really well. But the reason they wanted those jobs is because typically that was the progression to getting a job with a big law firm. So you'd work as a summer intern. Each summer, then they'd bring you on as an associate, and then you'd work there and hopefully eventually make it through their process and become a senior associate and then a partner. I mean, they had a set progression. Now a lot of those jobs have disappeared. I mean, when the economy really got difficult in 2007, 2008, 2009, you started to see an implosion of these big law firms because from a business perspective, they weren't a good model. When you looked at the way they compensated attorneys, that really hit them hard when business, started getting difficult to find. And so a lot of those jobs have disappeared, quite honestly. Yeah. And they haven't necessarily been replaced by other jobs. And so networking is great. But one of the problems with, for example, an externship at the county attorney's office is it may or may not lead to a job. Mm-hmm. It's simply an externship. It's simply, I think, I don't know if it's still, I can't remember what they called it. It was like a 38E job during your, last semester where you actually got to work on cases. It can get you in to possibly getting on with the county attorney's office, to possibly getting on with the public defender's office. If you work for a solo practitioner, it's hard to see that necessarily turning into a job someday because, a solo practitioner is a solo practitioner. They generally don't add other attorneys. They're not building a business. It is helpful, I think, if I were in your shoes at this time. I mean, I'd really think through what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And if doing an externship for a judge at the courthouse isn't going to lead to a job, but you have another opportunity to simply work for $10 an hour for a firm that could lead to a job, I'd take that job working as a clerk, to get in the door at a place that may lead to a job, as opposed to simply, being an extern in a courtroom that you don't think is going to lead to anything.
Yeah.
But you've got to evaluate those. You've got to go in with your eyes open. You have to put thought into it and then make decisions. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But if you got to put the thought into it.
Yeah. And I just have a few more questions here. I guess my next question would be, in school, we do a lot of group assignments. I think our teachers are doing a really good job of preparing us for, the real world where we're working with other attorneys and going back and forth and, coming up with solutions for clients. And I was just wondering, as far as the law, I mean, everyone has a different interpretation of what you're reading. And when you're working together, sometimes you get combative thoughts going back and forth. Luckily, while I've been in school, I've been given a lot of leadership opportunities within the group. So things have been going great, and I'm anticipating some more leadership opportunities as, the next 2 years go on. I was just, wondering, do you have any tips as far as being a leader? Obviously, you're the leader of your company. Anything I can bring back to school to help me succeed while I'm in school and then after? Leadership is hugely important. Being able to lead a team is a very big part of being successful. Now, again, it all depends on what role you ultimately end up in. Generally bigger companies have very successful people within those companies who aren't good leaders. But the reason the company is successful is because the people who need to be good leaders in specific positions are good leaders. And so being a good leader is fantastic. In order to be successful, and again, it depends on the environment you come out into, but I think to be successful in the legal environment as an attorney, you do need to be a leader. You'll always have a team that you need to lead. Now, that team may consist of one paralegal, and one secretary, or that team may consist of, 10 attorneys if you're a managing attorney, or it may consist of an entire firm. But your ultimate success, I think, within the practice of law as a lawyer is directly tied to your ability to lead other people. And in order to be a good leader, people have to be willing to follow you. Yeah. I mean, that's really what it is. People have to be willing to connect with you and what you're trying to accomplish, and they've got to get excited about it because of you and how you lead, and they help push it there, which makes building a firm like this, let's put it this way, it wouldn't be possible to build the firm like we have if we didn't have an entire team pushing it forward. If we didn't have the leaders within the firm that were able to get everybody else to get excited about ultimately reaching the goal and being successful, we would never be there. I couldn't do it on my own. Claudia and I couldn't just do it, the two of us. And so we've had to, as we've grown and as we've built this firm and as we've learned throughout those years, we've had to become better leaders. Mm-hmm. And a big part of that is continuous growth and continuous learning. One mistake or one, I think, shortcoming that I see in attorneys is they think, okay, I've gone to law school, I've graduated, I've passed the bar, now I'm licensed, so now my growth is done. Mm-hmm. Well, no, your formal education may be done. Mm-hmm. But your growth from a business perspective, your growth as a lawyer, none of those things are done. Those things are just starting. People have said it for years. I mean, they call it the practice of law. Law school does very little to teach its students about the actual practice of law. And law schools have always been perfectly upfront about that, as from my perspective. They say, look, we teach you to think a certain way. We teach you to think like a lawyer. Well, that's great, but that has nothing to do with the real life world of practicing law.
You learn that once you get out and you start to work cases and represent clients. And you've got to continue to grow as a lawyer. But if you want to be successful in the business environment that a law firm now is, you have to grow as a business person too. But I mean, I personally believe if you want to be successful in life in general, you have to continue to grow, whether it's, through mentors, whether it's through more schooling, whether it's through getting connected with, personal growth, companies or personal growth people like Tony Robbins or other people. I mean, there's so much out there to learn. And those who will truly be successful for an entire career will continue to grow, continue to learn. And, one of the challenges we have is I think lots of young attorneys, certainly, they think the learning's over. I mean, they don't think they need to grow anymore. They just think they need to start working. And I think that's a big mistake.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, very interesting too. Very interesting to hear from someone who's so successful. It's pretty awesome to see that someone who's doing so well is not taking a seat back in their own learning. It's not like you're sitting on the couch and just hanging anymore. You're continuing to better yourself, better your company, and better the people around you, which I think is just awesome. The last question I have here is just like you were saying, continuing to grow, running a business, and then even looking from my end right now, I'm in law school, preparing for the bar, trying to get a job. How do you balance all of these things? I know I work with my own priorities and you have your priorities. And I admit, it's a struggle to be able to be with my family when I want to be with my family and, do my schoolwork and, keep my health and fitness up and then continue to grow. I know one thing that I want to do personally is learn Spanish. It's probably one of my biggest downfalls. When I was younger, I was so close. I was doing so well, and here it is. It's been 9 years since I've even put together one sentence. So how do you manage that?
Let's put it this way. No, if success was easy, everybody would be hugely successful. Yeah. And the reason you have, I guess, in conversations, whether it's about finance or, the economy or our society, the reason you have a concept of the top 1%, and generally that revolves around earning, but it's because success takes a lot of work. Yeah. And not everybody is willing to do all of that work. Quite honestly, about 1% of us do it at a really high level. And that gets you up to that top 1%. And it's not easy. It takes lots of sacrifice. It takes setting goals and it takes a plan. You mentioned Spanish, in between finishing my time at the public defender's office and starting my firm, I moved to Mexico and spent 4 or 5 months doing an immersion program and getting my Spanish skills where they needed to be to represent Spanish-speaking clients. And I did it because I knew that would be worth a tremendous amount of money to me personally as I started my own firm, because it would allow me to represent a segment of the population that I really wouldn't be able to represent if I didn't speak Spanish. So I made the sacrifice. I moved to Mexico for 4 months. I spent the money to do it. I also knew if I was married and had 4 kids, that probably wouldn't have been feasible. And I sort of structured my path to starting a firm in a way that would allow me to do these things that I looked at far enough ahead of time so I could get to the ultimate goal. It takes a lot of that. I mean, and so if it was easy, if you could just sort of wing it, and suddenly end up hugely successful, everybody would be hugely successful. And so it's the same in law school. It's the same, after you finish school and you're trying to find a job. I think the newest attorney who started with us in Phoenix recently, she went to law school on the East Coast. She ended up in the Phoenix area because her fiance got a sales job out there, so they moved. Didn't know anybody, didn't have any connections, and she really worked hard in a methodical way to make connections, to show that she really was putting in 120% to develop herself, to find a job, and that's what she sold at the interview. And it was backed up by just who she was. I mean, this is a person who was a collegiate athlete at a very high level, did very well in law school. So you could look at it and you knew it wasn't a charade. You just knew that that's how she functioned. And I can tell you in our firm, that's what we look at, because we're not like a lot of law firms. I mean, we run our firm like a business. We work off of goals. We're structured. We pay our attorneys based off of the fees they generate. I can tell you 98% of all attorneys out there cannot be or will not be successful in our environment. The 2% that will be hugely successful, and they'll be compensated very well because of it. But it's because of how we've structured our firm. You have to really be organized. You've got to be a go-getter. You've got to be willing to put in the time, be willing to put in the sacrifice. You've got to be able to see the big picture and look out, and then figure out how to make that end goal for yourself happen. And if you do, you'll be hugely successful in our firm. So that's about 2% of the people that we've seen. So it's not easy. No one who is successful will tell you that it was easy. And again, that when you talk to your friends in law school, I mean, one of the things that I have always found perplexing, I guess for lack of a better way to put it, is it seems like with professionals, whether they're doctors, whether they're lawyers, people who get PhDs, there's this idea that now that I'm done with school, I've earned my stripes. And I can tell you, you haven't earned anything other than, in your case, the opportunity to practice law. Now, if you want to earn success, that's a whole new road you've got to go down that's just starting. What you've done up to that point has gotten you a license to now start down the next road. It hasn't put you halfway down the road to success. I mean, you're just getting started. That's always been my perspective. That's the way I've always seen it played out. I hate seeing attorneys who are 55 or 60 years old, who aren't happy with the money that they make, who aren't happy with their career choice, who don't think that the practice of law has, played out the way they've expected. If you end up there, I think it's because that's the road you took yourself down. Because I chose the practice of law because I saw it as the one road where no one else controlled my destiny. And for me, that's what it's been. And I think for any of your friends, for you, anybody who's a lawyer, that's what it can be.
Yeah.
If they're willing to make the sacrifice, figure out what needs to be done and how to do it well, and then go do it. I mean, that's life. Nobody hands it to you. And so, that's, for whatever that's worth, that's my input.
Yeah, I think it's worth a lot. And, thank you very much. Like I said, I'm going to probably be sharing this with some of my friends. And, to be honest, just after, getting the chance to talk to you, I'm extremely motivated to not only get through law school, but do well in law school and then continue my growth, find ways where I can be flexible and see what I can do to better myself. And then, of course, make those sacrifices, just like you said. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Oh, you're welcome. And like I said, I mean, if you've got any questions in the future, I know we've put this together in an interview format, so hopefully other people can see it and get something out of it in the future. But if you or your friends or colleagues who are in school or just starting their career have any questions, I mean, again, just track me down. Like I said, you can call us. You can call me. You can reach me by calling either our Tucson or Phoenix phone numbers. Probably the easiest way to get those is to just Google zaneslaw.com. But I'm happy to talk to you again or any of your colleagues or friends.
Awesome.
Or anybody out there who's listening to this, who's in law school, who has questions that weren't answered here.
We've come to the end of this episode. For more amazing information to help you wade through the confusing legal world, visit zaneslaw.com. We'll see you next time on Zanes Law's Personal Injury Legal Tips.